This is the Michael Brian Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. And today I'm joined with Max Kraynov, who is the Group CEO of FunCorp. So they are developers of entertainment tech products, so things like games, virtual reality, those kinds of things. So Max, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
So one of the things that I was quite curious about was how technology has changed over the years. We've come a long way just in the past sort of 5 or 10 years, with AI being quite prevalent now in comparison to what it was just 6 to 12 months ago. Paint a picture a little bit of how technology has shifted, how have the uses changed for those that want a bit of a breakdown in the technology of it all. Help us understand it a bit better.
Oh, it's such a big question. So we can separate the consumer space and the enterprise space, right? So my background is in enterprise. I started writing software in Java in 1997. So I do remember that in the past there used to be mainframes, right? And client servers, thin clients, thick clients, and so on. So to me, things like SAS are more like the way of service delivery more than anything else. It's just a more convenient way for people to collaborate, to communicate and cooperate. Not necessarily people, it could be actors, like software actors. You can plug in your favorite AI system and so on. So yeah, it's just the principle is the same. It's just it looks different, and media picks up this term or another term every now and then. So I think we're overwhelmed by the terms thrown at us. And every term has to be explained. Like, we had that before. It's just a different way of saying it. And so on. It's just amusing. So with AI and so on, it's the same thing. It's been around for years and years and years. Now the fact that people are able to generate text that are on or images that they used to be done by like underpaid humans. I mean, there is nothing new about it. Again, so if anybody remembers the SEO websites made specifically for search engine optimization and crawling, it's the same thing here. It's just maybe a little bit better quality, but having said that, the kind of the value is the same, like zero or close to zero, which is quite funny because yeah, I was kind of waiting to use that statement a bit later in the conversation, but if we're looking at where AI is going, it's so you have two groups of people. You have a group of people that is developing AI solutions to produce content, and you have another group of people producing AI tools to consume that content. So in a way, if both groups of people disappear, the world is going to like entropy. That's all. I mean, I don't think anybody would notice. Well, obviously I'm exaggerating, but not so much.
Yeah, it's a weird space. It's similar to my experience anyway with NFTs, and a lot of it is self-generated. It's person-generated. If it didn't happen, then it wouldn't be a big deal. And I think a big part of it is everyone that was pushing, say, AI or crypto or anything like that. I found anyway, there were so few that didn't have a vested interest in doing so. They'll all say how amazing it is. You need to get on this, you
Yeah.
need to do that, you need to do this. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, they've invested in it or they've put their money in it and it'll go up as a result of them saying that thing. And it's becoming a space now where it's so hard to really trust the system or the technology or anything like that. Like it's becoming difficult just through experience, just through understanding the past few years. It's making it harder to discern between something that's helpful, something that's not, something that's genuine, something that's not. Things will come and go all the time. And I've noticed that the interesting thing as well, I don't know what your take on it as well, Max, would be, but it seems like a lot of it is a bit too early. And I don't know if that's just my impression, where like the actual output of it, like you look at like some of the search engine stuff like chat and those open AI kinds of things, it wasn't that great. You had to be really, really good at using it, like almost like a calculator. Like if you're very good at using the calculator, you can do amazing things. But if you're not that great at it, like to be honest, I'm not. So the results I was getting were not that great, and that's because I wasn't that great at using it. That seems to be the space that we're in right now. Like the limitation is the people using it.
Well, you're touching a very interesting topic. So you mentioned that many technologies are too early. Um, I could offer a slightly different perspective on it, which is they're not too early, they're too shallow. Because they don't have enough matter in them in order to kind of justify their existence at all. And so, like what I said about blockchain many years ago, that it's the solution desperately looking for a problem. And it's still there, right? There is no good use case except for buying illegal drugs. Anyway, that's the easy bone to pick. It's just, I had to say that. But realistically, I think the perspective that I'm using is that there are some hot topics that people are using to their advantage, but not just to sell something. It's just to pretend that they are innovative in a way, so just to justify maybe their investors' appetite for being at the forefront of technology. I do remember that when a few years ago we had lots of road shows to list my previous company that I left a couple of years ago. I think every investor on earth asked about, well, back in the day it was blockchain. So what are you doing on blockchain? What are you doing here? What are you doing there? So the word of the month, was thrown at us just by every single investor. I'm sure. And I do now get calls like, Max, what are you doing with AI? Well, we're doing quite a few things with AI, but not the AI you think we are using. And that's the thing, right? So it could be the code for the initiated. Just, you can tell who is in the in group and who is in the out group. And usually those who are in the out group, I think they are more profitable than those who are in the in group because they don't
Yeah.
jump around trying to, uh, pick every trend and make use of it.
Yeah, it
Just
seems
me.
seems it's like everything is either an app or a website, and everything has .ai after it, and it just kind of confused me a little. And I just wonder what you think is happening, what your predictions might be. Where do you think this is going? Because you're very heavily invested in the development space, and you're creating things. You're not just using things, you're in the creation business as well. So where do you see
Yeah.
this heading?
Well, I can tell you how we are using AI, and that's it's very straightforward. So our core business, bread, butter, and thick layer of caviar on top is the app for a meme exchange called iFunny, which a few generations I think of US teenagers grew up using it. And as part of the technology behind it is we have a huge neural network. We use like one big server farm for that to analyze what is being said by people so that they don't really intimidate each other, that the content is safe. And I don't mean safe in the usual sense of word, safe as for platforms for Google and Apple, so that they would let us stay on the platform and so on. So that is where it's also AI, right? That it is used very heavily to classify information to see if there are any parts of the body that shouldn't be there and so on. That's a very practical application. So that is pretty much what we're doing. When it comes to producing content, I am kind of I'm a bit disturbed by the fact that we are able to absorb lots of information and spit out something that is, well, not funny. So computers can't make jokes. Just, again, I'm very heavily invested in humor, right? So I have my own classification, right? And that is, I think, it's quite relevant to what we're talking about. So the classification is very simple. It is, I rate every single joke 1 to 5. So 3 is okay. So you tried to make a joke and you succeeded. 4, it's actually funny. 5, it's hilarious. 2, you try to make a joke where it was stupid, and 1, don't joke ever again. That's it. Right? So that is, it's a very simple scale. So from my experience, what computers that's interesting actually. So AI technically is able to explain, but it's not able to produce. There is a very big gap, and to me, it's quite an unexplainable gap as to why. Right. So if you can explain, you can do something great, but no, it seems to be the gap. So most of the jokes, especially the memes that AI is capable of producing, it's probably 2 out of 5. Maybe 1 out of 5 is just because of maybe I don't know cultural insensitivity or just not knowing what words mean in certain contexts. But yeah, that's usually it's like 2 out of 5. So which is fine, right? So I mean, as a kind of filler content. So if you lack really good content, yes, it's something in between, right? Will allow you to kind of avoid jumping on every single high. Well, that being said, there is no shortage of human-generated really good content. So when we thought about maybe supplementing content with something that we produce ourselves, as through AI, we just said like resounding no, no, we are not doing that. Thank you so much.
It
Yeah,
seems like you need to have a bit of a system in place for your actual consumption of content. So you're so in the development phase, the content creation, you're doing the whole creator thing really well. I'd be curious about how do you spend your time on the consumption front? Because me myself, I don't consume a whole lot of content, not mindlessly, as I would say. A lot of it's like conscious and intentional, and like I use Google a lot to find the content that I actually would like rather than scrolling through TikTok and everything's random and all those things. I have no idea what I'm looking at anymore. I'd rather not do that. So I spend mine
yeah.
a bit more mindfully, I suppose you could say. What about you? How do you consume your content?
Actually, surprisingly, I couldn't even have imagined that question 10 years ago. So how do you like your content consumed? Okay, so I subscribe to maybe 20 paid newsletters. So I'm not a visual person. I'm a, person who likes reading, sometimes reading out loud. So that allows me to summarize information, to classify, to put some notes in my either into my notebook or into my Roam research software that I'm using, and so on. So and I read about like 20, maybe a bit more newsletters. Not necessarily big. Sometimes I just go diagonally. So if I don't like the topics, then I just scroll through it. But generally speaking, that is the and some memes. Some memes either on our platforms or on Twitter. Just for fun, right? Because I do like those micro dosing on serotonin. I came up with the term, I think. Yeah, so it's funny because kind of provides you a little bit of comic relief, just in between serious things, and that's it. So I don't watch TV. I do play games though sometimes. But yeah, the last one was Final Fantasy 16, which I love. But that's more of an exception because yes, I do have a huge TV at home, but yeah, I'm just not using it just because it looked really good on my wall. So I decided that why not make a fashion statement, really. And yeah, that's it. So I like walking, and when I'm walking, I don't walk alone. I walk with somebody, and I just talk to people, to live humans. And I think it's valuable, much more valuable than binge watching anything. Yeah, I don't have Facebook on my phone. I don't have Instagram on my phone. Don't have TikTok on my phone. Only have LinkedIn and Twitter. And yeah, that's roughly it. Well, email, of course, email.
Yeah.
Email, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm old-fashioned.
Old fashioned. It's interesting how the way that creators tend to think is very different to consumers. Like so for myself, I have the apps on my phone, but I only use it for creation. And once I've done the creation side, I then disappear. Like I don't spend a whole lot of time consuming or for entertainment purposes. Although I'll admit the way that you describe like bits of funny things in between the serious things to help break up the mental energy. I totally understand that because that's how I think it's my TikTok that tends to come across as that. Like it's just funny things almost all the time. But then I can't just have that because then I'm not intellectually stimulated in the same way. So I like to do a bit of both for that purpose, really. But yeah, I totally understand you can't be switched on permanently all the time.
No,
Taking
no.
5 minutes every half an hour is probably healthy.
That's roughly the
Yeah,
pace. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting how the other creators have the same thing as well. And a lot of them have, in air quotes, lives outside of their creation. So that takes up most of their time. And it's interesting that they all seem to say that the busier that they are and the more productive that they are in their real life, I suppose, the less time they spend
Hmm.
on their phone. And I can completely relate to that. I find it curious with yourself that you have newsletters as well. I find that quite interesting. Do you have any favorites?
Favorites. I like Rob Henderson, who writes about psychology and so on. I like Bern Hobart, who writes about like everything finance and generally. I like LinkedIn newsletter. I know not everybody likes Pascal, that's what I do. Uh, what else? There are some newsletters from consulting companies like BCG and McKinsey. There are, hmm, yeah, there are some product management newsletters and so on, which again I forgot the names. There is a very hilarious guy, Edward Neuromont, who used to. He has his marketing newsletter. It's called the Marketing BF. I think I agree with every single word he said because we have quite similar experiences. So yeah, that kind of fuels my day. But that being said, it comes at the expense of inability to read books. And I really, really kind of pity myself for that because now the only time when I can read a book for a prolonged period of time, like maybe 2, 3 hours at least, it's on a plane. I do fly a lot. Luckily, I do fly a lot. So my Kindle is always charged. But outside of the cabin, I don't. Just I can't because I'm not confined to a single space. Actually, so when I was when I was living in New York and I had to commute 1.5 hours each way, that was again. So people say, "Ah, no, work from home is better." No, no, long commute is blessing in disguise. It's your time. It's your time. And even if you're driving a car, you don't have your time because you can only listen to an audiobook. But when you're actually sitting there, because I lived at, almost at the far end of Queens, so when you're reading, yes, 1.5 hours of the time, and I digested I think one magazine per day. So I subscribed also like 20 magazines, different kind of Garrett, Herring, Inc, Forbes, Fortune, yada yada yada, and so I just went through them. So it's incredible, incredible. But again, books. So I have lots of books that I bought but not lots of books that I read recently. So my usual pace used to be about one book a week. Now it's close to one book a month, and that's if I'm
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah.
And I don't feel good about it.
How do you think social media has shifted things like that? So we don't just have to talk about books and content, but also the app development space. So, despite what people might think, Facebook started off as
Mhm.
an app. We had MySpace, we had Twitter, we had a couple of others that are now non-existent. It's still an app initially, like it's become an app. It's a website. It's on people's phones everywhere they go. How do you think social media has changed the landscape for you? So we could talk about content. We could talk about how people perceive app and software development, the amount of people that all want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and it's just thinking, well, is that not skewed? Maybe, maybe you should think a little bit differently. How did you think about things like that? Social media impacting your content, but also how people think about developing.
Well, there are several questions here at once. I'll try to just remove layer by layer. So, in terms of applicability of social media for us, is we have very good relationships with all platforms because we are buying their traffic to bring users on our platforms. So, as the user acquisition method, they're still doing the job. It's becoming increasingly more expensive So the business model now is under some stress. Well, that being said, they're still using that. Also, it's possible to use them to distribute the content that you have or somebody has uploaded to your platform. And yeah, generally that's roughly about it, like the way we're using it. And so sometimes the social networks are being used to well, create content by somebody else, and then we have users who are repurposing it for our platforms. So yeah, so those three prongs of social media, and yeah, that's about it. But we are talking about the short form content, and that is again that's something that many people, especially many academics, are not very happy about. That they're writing all kinds of papers saying that we have like clip thinking, that we can't concentrate too long, that we again that we're microdosing on good emotions. We can't, so we lost our ability to um, read and comprehend large texts, which, in my opinion, is actually true. Yeah, because it's not, I don't know. In my opinion, the solution is to learn to read faster, but who knows? Or you can make it shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so either or. So yeah, from that perspective, if that is true, and I think it has a big degree of truth in it, yeah, it's not good. And because we have let's say we have our own recommendation algorithm, right? So I have a slight idea how that works. And yeah, recommendation algorithms, they look at what drives you. So they're looking at certain signals that you are showing, like how long are you watching the video for? Do you finish watching it? Do you not finish it? Do you rewatch it? Do you share it? What did your friends do with it? What do people that look like you do with it? Right? And so what did the author of the video want to do with it? And so on. So that all kind of gets together, and yeah, you're pretty much hooked. That's also not good because again, I don't binge watch things not because I wouldn't want to watch it. It's just because I think I'm kind of prone to addiction. I'd say haven't tried it that much, but yeah, I did have a few TV series many years ago where I couldn't just stop watching. So yeah, I mean, unless you make a conscious decision to do so, just don't start. So, but again, social platforms, they are really made to encourage this sort of behavior. Well, how about one more? How about one more? How about one more? Okay, it's 4 a.m. and you need to wake up in 2 hours. So it's simply unhealthy on top
Yeah.
of everything else. Yeah, so that's again, also when it comes to the Facebook and other platforms, well, to state the obvious, they've been around for like almost 20 years. Back in the day, they started when, well, first of all, the market was smaller, when there was no how should I put it? There was almost no competition and not much demand, so they were able to grow the demand, and they grew up with the demand. So that's why they were very closely integrated with the people who kind of grew up with them. First, and the second, nowadays I don't think it's possible to do so, other than things like Be Real, which, in my opinion, again, um, I'm trying to be kind, but it's very hard to be kind to something that is useless. Uh, no, again, so yeah, it's I think back in the day, these platforms really gave users lots of value, as we call consumer surplus, right? And nowadays, it's completely the opposite. And what's bad about it, in my opinion, is that I think we have almost run out of massive use cases that could be covered by apps or websites or FAS and so on. Okay, maybe there are, we just don't know that they're big, or maybe they're going to replace other use cases. But again, that's the work for psychologists and for those who are, for data analysts as well. But so far, it looks like whatever new things that pass as innovation are not innovations. They are anything but.
Yeah, it must be a bit strange when maybe you're trying to help someone that wants to start their own app, or they want to build a website, or they want to build something similar to yourself, for people that want to be under your wing a little, they want to follow in your footsteps, and yet they have this dream and grand vision that they might think is fantastic, but then you could point them to 5 or 10 other things that have happened previously.
Yeah,
And I think it's becoming this almost situation where it's a personal perspective that they're using to almost justify their thing that they want to do. So it's, oh, well, there isn't anything like this before. And you think, well, if you zoom out a couple of 1,000 feet, you'll see there's 10.
yeah.
And they all didn't do well for these 2 or 3 reasons. Yours is very unlikely to top that unless you're particularly special. And this is something that's kind of prevalent in a lot of other industries as well. It's not just sort of technology, it's happening everywhere where people will think that they're fantastic in their bubble, and then as soon as they go outside of that, they've got a lot to learn and a lot to figure out before they start to embark on these things. It makes me think actually, Max, if people wanted to follow you in your footsteps, if people wanted to create something, develop something that's cutting edge, that's helpful, that's beneficial, maybe profitable. I guess we'll get to that later, maybe. What would your advice be for them?
Uh, well, I think, but you did mention it earlier, that there is time and place for everything. For every business model, there is this sweet spot, maybe 2 or 3 years long, when if you are able to jump into that boat at that particular time, then you are lucky. If you're not, then you will always try to catch up. And we did see that in my previous business when because it was a flight search engine, the third largest in the world still. But when we tried to enter the US market, when there was already Kayak and Skyscanner, obviously we failed, right? So we tried to repeat the steps with Skyscanner. And every single time we tried to do that, they beat us at it. I don't think they even competed with us. Really, they didn't care, and that was very smart of them. Simply because, I mean, so by doing the same what the winner has done, you're literally trying to kind of pull yourself to the position of a winner when he's again much far ahead of you. So it's endless and pointless exercise. So I would not recommend people to try to copy things verbatim. Maybe, and again, that's interesting because founder-led companies have a huge, benefit that, let's say, professional field like me don't have, and that is they are able to project their personality in the product. So that could be the competitive advantage. Oh, it's a competitive. No, it's the wrong term. Not competitive advantage. That could be the distinction for them. So because for people, let's say like me, the distinction would be, I don't know, I'm just being a little bit self-cynical. So how many buzzwords I can put into the sentence describing the company? Okay, it's AI, ML, blah, 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 and so on. And that the founder companies, they position themselves different. Yeah, that shows. So yeah, the solution would be, well, actually, I think the best solution, and that's exactly where the founder's personality kicks in a lot, is that if we look at some serious businesses that grew up, they didn't start as a product. Well, some of them did, but most did. They started as a community. So they started as just meaning that community, meaning that these are your first customers, so who you intimately know, who you are able to serve, and who are very open to providing you with feedback, like immediate feedback, right? Because the lack of feedback is everybody's nightmare, especially now, and that's probably another another topic. Yeah, so they're able to provide, and again, but you can't build community if you are an unbearable person. That's exactly so. Your community, in a way, unless you hijack somebody else's community and not create one for yourself, it kind of matches some, or at least compatible with your personality. And that's exactly why I'm saying that. So once you're building your business, inevitably it becomes kind of a projection of your personality. Maybe not super visibly, but to a large degree. So yeah, so that's my take on it.
Right, so it's almost like you have to build the customers first and then create
Yeah.
the solution to that. What are some of the easiest ways of doing that? What are the easy ways of bringing people together without, I guess, doing it with the intention of selling to them, which may actually switch them off to joining? Like if they're aware that you're going to sell to them perpetually once they've joined, they're maybe less inclined to do it if that's the impression that they get. So how would you suggest people build communities, especially, in 2023, maybe 2024 and beyond? Community
Hmm.
building seems to be what you're edging towards. So how would you suggest people do that?
Oh, what a wonderful question. So I did build communities around myself, but it was like 20 years ago. But if I could project our portfolio companies' experience, and because they are VR company and VR games, most VR games start with the community and then the product. Because there is no other way of making a game. Because again, it's such a small market that I mean, if you don't have a customer from the beginning, you're as good as not existing. So the way they are doing it is they are well, first of all, they are very competent. And I'm not meaning that like in a very bragging way. They're competent because they are able so they have opinions. That's the most important thing. They have opinions and visions. They have very good picture of the world. Like they have seen lots and lots of things, and they do have an idea what works and what doesn't, and not works from the business perspective, works from the consumer perspective. What does the consumer want? Where does the consumer spend more time? How can we also provide some extra serotonin to a person? So knowing that allows them to go to platforms like Reddit or Facebook or forums still, so where people actually interact and try to recruit people, saying, guys, we need your opinion. What do you think of that? How do you like these pictures? How do you think those game characters would work? What do you think about the gameplay and so on? And the Discord is very good for bringing communities in, especially for gaming. And yeah, that's how slowly but steadily they are accumulating audiences. Also, it depends on the product, right? So let's say the Facebook 2.0, if we were to launch it today, it wouldn't work simply because the product is the community in a way, but also because uh, so when we're talking about like grassroots communities, people are very friendly, and the ratio of toxic people to normal people is nowhere near when you have a mature product, and especially if somebody uses it specifically for the purpose of intimidating. Well, I'm not saying that it's the only purpose of Facebook, but yeah, obviously we know what I'm talking about. So yeah, in this case, growing the community from ground up, it's not as hard, but it is work. It's the invisible work that it's it's a thankless work as well. But just last week I was at Gamescom, right, a gaming conference, and I looked at the co-founder of the founder of our VR studio was there with me as well, and so he hasn't seen anybody before, but he was immediately likable. Everybody knew who he was because he participated. He paid it forward. He provided advice. He asked questions, answered the questions, suggested, and so on, and that created like a certain social standing for the person. And the guys have communities for every game they're building, and there are two games being released and two games in development. So four communities. Plus there are bigger communities. Well, especially again, so I'm excited about the topic, to be honest. If something is just emerging, right? Communities thrive simply because there is enough for everybody to do. So you don't need to compete. You don't need to backstab. It's too early for that. Well, maybe there is time for that eventually, but not immediately. So at the moment, everybody is super friendly, and I think that's the best. There are not many niches, though, or at least I'm not aware of many niches that are as grassroots, let's say, as we are at the moment, just in the early stages of consumer adoption. Hopefully, there will be more because we clearly need them.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's the kind of space that is being disrupted or it's changing or adjusting all the time, with things like technology being produced and becoming usable faster and faster and faster.
Hmm.
And I kind of felt like we skipped AR and went straight to VR in that when I was using Snapchat, let's say, and you were able to put like stickers on actual real life through the lens, and now all of a sudden VR is there and it's taken out, and now it feels like AI is there before most of the public bought a
Hmm.
VR headset.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden we've got AI supposedly taken over. It's almost getting to a point where things are no longer becoming consumer prevalent or usable or popular before the
Hmm.
next thing is
Yeah. Yeah.
here. And the next
Yeah.
it's getting that fast that it almost cuts the consumer out of it in a way. Because by the time it gets to us, there's the new thing, and it doesn't even get to us, and then there's the new thing. And what do you think's happening? Like, what's next? Where's this all coming from? How are people able to do such a thing when we don't really need a customer base before you can then fund the next thing and then the next thing, and then before you know it, there'll be a new AI before most people even know it exists. And I think they're like version 3 or 4 of some of these systems now, and I'm thinking, what happened to the first one? Like, why didn't the first one really get used? It just seems like it's happening quicker than the people can actually keep up with it and use it and benefit from it. In almost like it's not really involving us as much anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I do like the way you put it. Um, okay, so let's try to unwrap it. First of all, yeah, I completely agree that all these technologies, they are not consumer friendly. They're not particularly alien, but they're not friendly. Yeah, the consumers are unable to catch up with the pace. Which brings me only to two solutions, two conclusions and the solutions. So the first one is that it's done by I'd say entrepreneurs, right? But I don't mean it in the way, the way I said it, um, who are monetizing themselves through investors' money, milking investors just because they're sweet talking and are able to use the words in the right sequence in a sentence. Well, I mean, I think still for some companies that's enough to get funded, much less so than a couple of years ago, but still. And another thing is, uh, and that it bothers me to say this, but I'll still say it. Why not? You should pay attention to the personalities of those people who jump on the next bandwagon every single time, like every 3 months. So they were blockchain experts. 3 months later, they are AI experts. Then they are VR experts. So it's the same people. It's literally the same people. And some of them, if they are like, really resourceful, they can even write a book or two. But it's so the masters of finance. Well, I happen to know a few of such people. Honestly, again, that may sound a little bit arrogant, but I would never ever hire them in any capacity. And again, they may come across as curious and knowledgeable, but no, no, it's not. So, and if I had to guess, quite a few of such so-called businesses are driven by these people. And it's maybe it's even a kind of hidden form of chasing highs. Right? Some people are so hooked on knowledge that other people do not possess, then they think of it as well, as the end in itself.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you word it like that because it's making me think, well, is it going to collapse under its own weight eventually, where eventually things will stop being viable and these investors slash humans, other people with money to invest, see the history of it and think, well, why is this going to be different this time? it's becoming one of the questions that I would actually ask somebody if someone wanted to create an AI company or software or app or whatever. I think, okay, well, looking at your history of going from one to the other, it's almost like applying for a job. Like if you were applying for a job and the employer sits in front of you and says, okay, between 2010 and 2020, you did 4 or 5 projects. Why didn't the first one be successful? And they say, oh, well, this, that, and the other thing, it wasn't perfect market fit or whatever it is. You throw some kind of terminology as if they're going to try and confuse them. And they'll look at it and say, okay, well, why should we be number 6 in this everlasting list that you
In your
have?
learning journey.
Yeah, learning. Yeah, they use all kinds of words. And I wonder why people are convinced. Why do people get convinced? Why do these investors say, "Oh yeah, well, is it like the promise of being the next like VR system using AI that mimics reality? Like, is that what the promise is?" And it goes, "Oh no, well, barely able to count, and it's not worked, and we didn't get enough money, therefore we couldn't build a system quickly enough." As if I don't even think the technology's there yet. You know, when you sort of think, well, pumping money into research and development, it doesn't really create the system either. Like, it doesn't instantly get results just because you throw money at it as well. Like it's becoming a state of like uneducated people educating slightly less educated people, and somehow they've got more money than sense. I don't know where it all comes from.
There was an amazing piece. I forgot who. It was either Andrew Chen or Eugene Wei who wrote a big article about angel investment being a status symbol. And that concept, it's Googleable and it's amazing. It's a fascinating reading. But the short conclusion of the article is that people do it for clout. People do it just so that they can say that they have invested money into something. It's relatively cheap bragging rights. And again, you're not again, as you said, more money than sense, right? It's less about the returns. It's more about feeding yourself like an accomplished person who is at the forefront of technology and who puts his or her money where the mouth is. Incredible. Give me two, right? So
Give me two. That's funny.
no, but seriously, in Australia, for example, we have, I'm not going to name names, just going to protect the sanity. Yeah, we do have a couple of conglomerates where the entry ticket is like $5,000, right? That kind of pocket money for many. And yeah, then you would be able to literally spoon feed multiple startups like $500 at a time. And yeah, so your $5,000 goes like towards 10 startups. Imagine that. Imagine that. That's the best thing that can happen to you, right? So you have invested into 10 potential Googles. Can't beat that. Well, unless you invest into 20 potential Googles.
So would that be $10,000 then, where you just sort of double the
Oh, it's gonna
investment,
be,
double the companies?
yeah, well, it doesn't work like that with angel investment, of course, but yeah, still. So yeah, so people do financial decisions for lots and lots of irrational reasons. And it's curious because in general, um, irrationality is something that, or irrationality is something that we, I think, needs to be prepared for when building apps or building any sort of system. In particular, when it comes to payment apps or whenever one party exchanges funds with another party, right? So we are not supposed to kind of enjoy the streamlined experience. So just with a click of a finger or 2 fingers, I can't click one finger. Yeah, so you would pass the money to another person, and that there is a whole big billion ecosystem going on behind it, right? So be it credit, be it bank transfer, be it stored value system transfer, and so on. That's completely hidden from users. And that's again, it's every single time that happens, it's a small micro dose of happiness.
Yeah, it's becoming a situation where I'm hoping that there's a solution. I'm hoping that there's something out there that can almost shortcut all this because no one really knows what is true, what's real, what's valuable, what's helpful. If everyone's doing it for the status symbol and the clout and the reputation, which is essentially just a label, really, to say that you've done it. I mean, I've been there when I was younger. I was collecting labels and badges and all kinds of things, and now you look back and realize it didn't really mean anything. What's the solution to this? It seems like there's far too much money in the system. So you, as someone that's been doing this for a very long time, just wrap it all up into a nice little present for us called the solution. What would it be? What would be the option? Is it knocking the monopoly board over and starting again? Is it taking money off these people? What's the solution?
Well, the short answer is I don't know. The longer answer is that, well, again, my psychotherapist told me once that you should have a good hobby. Well, it's such a good throwaway advice. Yeah, couldn't really implement it. To me personally, and I don't recommend copying me, not that somebody wanted to, is to do, because my job in general, right, is to solve complex tasks. So I don't do the simple things. I only get involved when things go really hard and there is, and you need like Superman, right, to solve that. So that drives me a lot. And that also allows me to kind of understand the value of, let's say, of myself and what I, let's say, bring to the company and so on, but while trying to be, quite humble as much as I can. So being able to balance that, being able to balance value and humility, if that's possible at all, that's what I think that's the solution. That's the immediate solution to not having these sinful thoughts. I need cloud and so on. There is one arrogant thing that I've practiced for the last 5 years, but again, I can allow myself one arrogant thing, and that is I do not carry business cards with me, and that's not because it's not by design. It's well, how shall I put it? It's not because they change every time. It's just because if I'm missing somebody, they already know who I am. But that's the only arrogant thing I can allow myself. Other than that, yeah, it should be humble. It's much more fun.
Is there anything that you do personally to, whether it's you're shortcutting the simplicity, whether you're just not valuing the short-term gratification, whatever it is, whatever your operating system might be, what do you do to do that? It sounds like I'm asking it very simply as well. But how do you think this way? How do you shortcut the simplicity, the simple thoughts, the simple short-term thinking? What do you do to do that, to live this way, to help people try and be more like that so that they're not as reactive, they're not as short-term thinking, they're not as simple, for want of the better expression. How do you do it?
Oh, what a wonderful question. So let me think. Well, first of all, I think some of it comes just simply with experience and simply with just having seen so many things that happened to so many people that it's kind of nowadays it's quite hard to be surprised. This way, there is one unorthodox answer to it, but and that is what I genuinely recommend to everybody. I Well, I was quite, let's say, quite nervous, quite agitated some time ago, and then I took two negotiation courses. So through the advanced negotiations program in Stiad, for anybody who's interested, is strongly recommended. And that kind of changed my life overview in general. So it's because my issue was that I wanted quick results because time is money, time is valuable. I can't waste my time doing that. And that completely distorted the picture. It distorted the value system. And it allowed me, having completed both courses, I slowed down. I did understand that whatever happens, most things are solvable. that you have humans sitting next to you, right? Even across the table and so on. And that you obviously, well, that's quite cliche, work win-win, but what exactly does that mean, right? That so trying to ask to understand and not ask to convince, and
Right.
those things. Right? Again, it's a bunch of things that are kind of self-evident, but put it in a very neat system and like even practical tips and tools how to do that helped me a lot. And so from that perspective, again, I'm much happier, like if we are all happy rather than if I'm just happy myself and my neighbor is not, for example. So that's that was super valuable. And again, I recommend just any sort of negotiation courses that are focused on win-win and not those courses that are like Trump style, like I win, you lose.
Well, Max, it's been phenomenal. Thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate that. I hope those that are listening practice it, go on the courses, learn as much as they can from that and from you. So it's been an incredible conversation. Thanks so much. Those that want to find out more about you, where can they go? So it could be websites, it could be social media. How can people find more about you and the work that you're doing?
It's easy to find me on LinkedIn or Google. I'm Googleable, so yeah, on LinkedIn it's just Max Kraynov, the tag. And yeah, it's fun.co, fun.co. That's our website. Uh, we have our apps there for memes and for everything. Easy.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Max, thanks so much. It's been great, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Michael.